Yes, a very good morning. Right, I hope all of you are able to hear me. Okay, right. So yesterday we looked into a few standards. I hope you have revised those, looked into those standards and plus some other standards also. So today also we are going to look into a few more standards on auditing, a few important questions from those. First of all, I'm very happy for those, that who have come again at 10 o'clock in the morning sharp to attend the lecture. So that itself is one positive step towards discipline, which is a very important ingredient for being a CA student. Right, being on time and being particular and not procrastinating and not delaying and postponing things till eternity. Okay, because the exam dates, that is what is being discussed in the chat. So we don't know, whatever is the date announced as of now, that's the date we are aware about. Okay, but then your preparation for studies, I think it has gone down the way the prices of crude oil have gone down. They've gone into negative, I think, your study preparations, just anticipating that what would happen, and now you have more time to study. But don't do that. You be on track, you continue, you make the maximum best utilization of the time to study. Right, so today let's begin with essay 520, which is regarding the analytical procedures. Right, analytical procedures, it is one of the 7 out of the 7 methods of obtaining audit evidence. One which we have over there is the analytical procedures. So when auditor has to perform these substantive procedures, he has two options over there. And two other procedures that is separate, but main whether to do detailed checking or whether to do the analytical checking. Right, so test of details is what we call it, or whether to perform these substantive analytical procedures. Right, so substantive analytical procedure, whether that should be performed, whether that procedure should be performed by the auditor, there are some factors which will help you to determine so. Right, so again, one of the ATF question of the institute, right, all-time favorite question of the institute is regarding the factors to be considered while using substantive analytical procedures. Right, so what's the question that we are discussing? The factors to be considered while using the substantive analytical procedures. Right, first factor over there is the suitability. Right, that whether performing analytical is suitable or whether performing the detailed audit procedure, that is going to be suitable. Right, so say the risk of material misstatement is very, very high. You have assessed accounting estimate or say any expenses of the company to be an RMM or to be a significant risk. Now what would you prefer? Detailed checking, analytical checking, combination of both, or what? Right, so if the risk is high, you will prefer more of detailed checking and also a little bit of analytical. You won't only get sufficient appropriate audit evidence only by performing the analytical procedure. Right, so in this case where RMM is high, you would say that no, substantive analytical is not suitable. Right, so that's the first factor. What is the heading I am discussing with you? The factors to be considered while using the substantive analytical procedures. What is the first factor? The suitability of using substantive analytical. It also depends upon the effectiveness of internal controls. If internal controls in the organization are effective, right, you've done the test of control, you've checked the design, implementation, maintenance of internal controls in the organization, and you found that the controls are effective, then in such a case, again, you can say that substantive analytical would be suitable as compared to when the controls are not effective. Right, so that's the first factor, the suitability. Second factor, that whether I should do substantive analytical, that's my heading, and that's the heading we are discussing. Right, it depends upon the reliability of the data which is going to be used by the auditor while performing these substantive analytical procedures. Right, the reliability of the data. Like, when I want to perform analytical, one way of performing analytical is compare with previous year. Right, compare with the industry information, compare with the budget. So obviously I'm comparing it with some other data. Right, so the data which is being used by the auditor for performing the analytical procedure which is going to be used, whether that data is reliable. What is the source of the data? Who has prepared the data? What were the controls over the preparation of the data? Whether the data is comparable. You also have to check the comparability, no? Right, you can compare one per se ICICI Bank with State Bank of India, but you cannot compare ICICI Bank with Tata Motors. It has to be similar industry information. Right, so that's the second factor, the reliability of the data and whether it is appropriate. Right, third one, right, factor. What is the third factor over there? The expectation. Right, whether the auditor is able to build up an expectation regarding, according to him, how much should be the rent, according to the auditor, how much should be the electricity expenditure, according to the auditor, how much should be the traveling expenditure for the current year, and then you compare it with actual. And then if you find that it is very inconsistent, there is too much of fluctuation, then auditor will investigate in detail. Right, so the third factor is whether the auditor is able to build up an expectation to identify a misstatement. And the last factor over there is the materiality. Right, say your expectation was 2 lakh and actual expenditure over there is 3 lakh. Now your expectation 2 lakh, actual 3 lakh, difference of 1 lakh. Right, between expected value and the actual value, the difference is of 1 lakh. Now, whether this difference of 1 lakh I should consider or whether I should ignore, that depends upon materiality. If materiality is 5 lakh, you say, oh, 1 lakh, ignore. And only difference of 1 lakh, let's ignore. But if materiality had been 20,000, then 1 lakh would have been a material amount for you. Right, so these are the 4 factors to be considered by the auditor while performing the or while deciding to use the substantive analytical procedures. What are those 4 factors? The suitability, the reliability of the data, then the expectation, as the auditor able to build up an expectation to identify a misstatement, and also the materiality. Okay. Right, then what did we say? That when you compare with some data, you develop an expectation, and if it is inconsistent, you investigate in detail. Right, the standard says that if there is inconsistent, you find out that the plausible relationship between the data is inconsistent, you investigate in detail. So investigate in detail means exactly do what? Again, this was asked as a question in the exam. Right, investigating the results of analytical procedures. Right, so how do you investigate the results? One, obviously, you will make the inquiries of the management. Right, make inquiries of the management. Right, ask management, how come I am expecting the expenditure to be 2 lakh, your actual expenditure is 3 lakh. So, inquiries of the management. And also you may perform other audit procedures as appropriate in the circumstances. Right, so you can increase your nature, timing and extent of audit procedures accordingly. Right, so that is essay 520, 2 questions which I wanted to discuss over there. One, the factors to be considered while using substantive analytical procedures, and second one, investigating results of the analytical procedures. Okay, right. Yes, so all good? Okay, right. Then coming to another standard, say let's come to essay 720. Okay, essay 720, the opening ceremony of that standard took place recently. Opening ceremony means when first time it is asked in the exams, never asked before that. And a 720, the auditor's responsibilities in relation to other information. Okay, now other information, what other information are they talking about over here? Right, it says other information. If I put it in simple words, the formula for the definition of other information is the contents of the annual report. Right, the annual report of the company, say 400 pages, total contents of the annual report minus financial statements and audit reports. So if I remove the financial statements and audit report from the annual report of the company, all the other financial and non-financial information in the annual report of the company is referred to as other information. All the financial, non-financial information in the annual report of the company, apart from the financial statements and the audit report, is referred to as the other information. Right, then in the standard they have given examples of what could be the amounts or what could be the other items which will constitute other information. Right, so it says selected operating data, then summary of key financial results of the company, the financial ratios of the company, the business outlook, the overview of the strategy of the company, the accounting estimates, the description, the identification of the related parties, then the financial reporting standards, right? So lot of points regarding all which could come in the annual report apart from the financial statements and the audit report. Right, even some chart given, some bar graph regarding how the revenue of the company is increasing year on year, or a pie chart has been given over there regarding the the distribution, how the revenue is coming from different sources or products of the company. All that will constitute the other information. Okay, so one example question which has been asked is, what are the amounts and items which are included in the other information? Right, so operating data, financial results, then the financial ratios of the company, related parties, off-balance sheet arrangements, business outlook, strategy, right, all these will constitute the other information. Right, what is not included in other information? All these extra reports which are required to be given. Like, the business responsibility report, labor practices, human rights report, right? Any product diversification report. So those, it says, is not coming. Apart from the annual report, any other reports being prepared, that is not coming in the other information. Okay. Now, is the auditor required to express an opinion on the other information? Is he required to cover it in his auditor's opinion? No, auditor is not required to do the audit of the other information. He only needs to check the consistency. That whatever, say, in the other information, revenue is given 1000 crores. There is a graph over there which is revenue for the current year 1000 crore. So in financial statements, in the profit and loss account, the revenue over there should also be 1000 crore. That is simple. Okay, you have to check in the other information, all financial, non-financial information, whether it is consistent with the financial, non-financial information in the financial statements. Right? You think you've understood, right? I can't ask you, have you understood? That's very risky, but even, thinking that you've understood itself is a big achievement. Okay, but pay attention. Slowly, it will percolate. You'll be able to absorb and understand. Okay, right. So now as an auditor, what are the steps I need to perform? So one, they've asked in the question, what are the amounts and other items included in other information? So that question I expected to be repeated. Or now they can go forward. And now whatever next coming into the standard, that question could be asked in the exams. Okay, right. So one, I need to have a discussion with the management or agree with the management regarding what all is included in your other information. What all do you put in your annual report? Right. So one, you conclude, yes, you consider what all is included in the other information. Then after that, you request the management, you tell the management that please provide us the other information prior to the date of the audit report. Why? So that if there is any inconsistency, we can come check up for the same. Right? So obtain the other information from the management prior to the date of the report. But obviously there could be situations where the other information may not be ready by the time on the date on which you issue the audit report. So in that case, you will have a written representation from the management that the other information will be made available to the auditor before its issuance by the entity. So before you publish it in your annual report, you have to first give it to the auditor for doing the checking, for performing his procedures as laid down in 720. Right, so what are the 3 points I told you right now? One, agreeing with the management regarding what constitutes the other information, understanding from them. Second one, requesting the management to provide you the other information prior to the date of the audit report. And if it is not available till the date of the audit report, getting a written representation from the management that it will be made available to the auditor prior to its issuance by the entity. Is it clear to everyone? Right. And now the auditor is going to read. What is the procedure of 720? You have to read. R-E-A-D. You have to read the other information. And read for what? To check the consistency. Right, other information, revenue figure, financial statements, revenue figure. Other information, PBT figure, financial statements, PBT figure. You have to check the consistency. If it is consistent, wonderful, standard is over. That is what is expected. right? That whatever is the common information between the other information and the financial statements, whether that is consistent. The story goes further if it is not consistent. Right, so now there could be a material inconsistency, right? Both your ears open? Okay, right. Material inconsistency between the other information and the financial statements. So your revenue is 1000 crore, their revenue is 800 crore. Problem. Did you understand? Right. Material inconsistency between the other information and the financial statements, or something which the auditor did not understand while understanding the entity and its environment. Now he has understood that by reading the other information. They had never told the auditor about the contingent liabilities and litigations and claims going on against the entity. When he read the other information, he came to know about it. Okay, right. So material inconsistency between other information and financial statements, or second one, the auditor's understanding of the entity and its environment needs to be updated. Okay, material inconsistency, and now due to the inconsistency, two possibilities. Other information requires revision or the financial statements require revision. So 1000 crore, 800 crore, example. So either at both places it should be 800 crore. If both places it should be 800 crore, in that case the other information requires revision. And if in financial statements it should be 1000 crore, then financial statements require revision. Right. If financial statements require revision, then it says you perform the procedures in accordance with these standards. Right, so you modify your opinion or you follow SA 560, subsequent events, facts that become known to the auditor after the date of the audit report or so. So now the standard discusses about when there is a material misstatement in the other information. So other information right now is shown as 1000 crore, actually it should have been 800 crore. Is everybody understanding so far? Right, so I expect a case study on this one. Okay, when there is a material misstatement of the other information, what are you going to do? You're going to request the management to correct the other information. Yes, you're going to request the management to correct the other information. You're going to request management, please make this 1000 crore 800 crore, because in financial statements it is 800 crore. Right, so if management agrees, just determine whether they've done the revision. And if management does not agree, they say no auditor, here it will be 1000 crore, financial statements let it be 800 crore. Then auditor will have to now communicate to TCWG. Right, auditor will now have to notify the management TCWG. Even after communicating to TCWG, they do not agree to correct the other information. One, the auditor will consider the implications on the audit report. He might say that now let me put in my audit report and other matter paragraph. This other information is not consistent with the financial statements. Right, so auditor needs to consider the implication on the audit report. And obviously if client wanted to make it 800 crore, they would have made the revision in the other information. But they want to keep it as 1000 crore. So they are going to object the auditor putting it in the audit report also. So auditor says, if you don't allow me to put it in the audit report, then in that case I need to consider whether I need to withdraw from the engagement. Okay, once again I will tell you, I am talking about the material misstatement in the other information. Right, other information is materially misstated. What do? You request the management to correct the other information. If management agrees to correct, just determine whether they've actually corrected it. Management does not agree to correct the other information. One, you communicate to TCWG. Right, you notify management TCWG. After notifying management TCWG, still they are not ready to correct it, right? Still refusing to correct the other information. Consider the implications on the auditor's opinion and also consider whether it is appropriate to withdraw from the engagement. Right? Right? So maybe today after the session gets over, you again from whichever textbook you are studying from, just go through SA 720 over there. Okay, and nowadays many of them are saying we don't have textbook only, ma'am, because of the lockdown. Institute modules, that is there with 720 from the resources of the institute. From there also you can download the standard. See, I simply understand. It's not that we are from the teacher's perspective I'm talking about, but I simply understand that where there is a will, there has to be a way. If there is no way, you create one. But just no, I have a lot of will to study, ma'am. There won't be any person on earth who would be as willing to study as me. But the problem is, ma'am, the material not available, lockdown, no courier service. Oh my God, means I have nothing more to say for you. Okay, right. Anyways, right, let's come to another standard on auditing. 720, is it applicable for IPCC? No, it is not applicable for IPCC. IPCC people, for you, final level 36 standards on auditing are applicable, and at inter level 27 standards are applicable, right? So intermediate, out of 9 standards not applicable, one of them is 720, right? Right, so final level applicable. Okay. Right, so now coming to another standard, SA 550, which is regarding the related parties, right, which is the corresponding accounting standard for SA 550, sorry, right, which is the corresponding accounting standard AS 18, and which is the corresponding Ind AS 24. In CARO 2016, where do you do the reporting for related parties? In CARO 2016, where do you do the reporting for related parties? Yes, clause, right, clause, right, 13 of CARO 2016, which is regarding the related parties. Which section of the Companies Act 2013 talks about related parties? Right, section 177, which is actually audit committee, but audit committee approval is required for entering into certain transactions with the related parties. And 188 is regarding RPT, that is the related party transactions. Okay. Anyways, right now coming to SA 550, which is regarding the related parties. I hope everybody is paying attention, everybody is listening to me. Right. Okay, not much to be, yes, okay. Right, SA 550, clause 3, no, it is clause 13. Okay, right, yes, so related parties, very important ATF question over there, the audit procedures to identify the related parties. Whose responsibility? The disclosures of related parties to be given in accordance with AFRF, management's responsibility. Right, so as an auditor, what are the audit procedures the auditor should perform to identify the related parties? Right, so again one of the ATF question. Right, so first step in most of our audit procedures answer is what? That understand. Right, you ask management how many related parties, right, how have you identified the related parties, whether transactions have been disclosed, all transactions with related parties have been disclosed, whether all disclosures of related party relationships and transactions have been given in accordance with the AFRF. Okay, so understand. Right, obtain from the client a list of the related parties. Right, they would have prepared, that so many subsidiary, associate, joint venture, key managerial personnel, enterprises where they are able to exercise significant control or significant influence. So obtain a list of related parties. Right, you would be having your last year working papers also, because last year also related party disclosures would have been given. Right, so you just need to update, okay, what are the changes in the list of related parties and the transactions and relationship as compared to the previous year. Right, so first thing, you try to make sense of the situation. When you have to do the audit of related party, understand everything regarding the related parties. And now as an auditor, indirectly, through various records and documents, I'll try to check whether there are any unidentified, undisclosed related party relationships or transaction. Right, so you now try to indirectly check. Right, so now to indirectly check, there is a list of records and documents which will help you to identify the related parties. Yes, everyone, what question am I discussing with you? Audit procedures to identify the related parties. Right, so first what you did, you understood, right, whatever client told from their side. And now I'm going to tell you the list of records and documents which may help you to identify the related parties. Right, first record or document, it says obtain confirmation from the third parties. Right, the banker, debtor, creditor, right, you get the confirmations from the third parties. Even from there you can get information regarding the existence of any related parties. Right. Second one, you can review the minutes of the meetings of the board of directors, audit committee, shareholders, because we said no, audit committee approval is required for entering into a transaction with a related party. So then you see, oh, minutes of the meeting, audit committee, there they have discussed, taken approval of audit committee. Then you say, why audit committee approval? Oh, because it's a related party. Right, so see, through a record or document, through the minutes of the meeting, you could have also identified a related party. See, if management discloses all related party, nothing like it. But we have to check from our side the completeness. No, there might be some unidentified, undisclosed related parties. Okay, so one, confirmations from the third party. Second one, the minutes of the meeting. Next one, the income tax returns. Right, section 40A2B of the Income Tax Act, and 40 payments to related parties. Right, even that can give you information regarding the related parties. Right, then after that, the shareholders register, the investment plans, the pension plans, right, the investments made by the entity during the year, then the papers filed with the regulator, internal auditors report, right, because again, generally internal controls may not be followed when the transaction is to be entered into with a related party. So internal auditor has reported in his report certain weaknesses in internal control. And then you say, okay, why management override of control? You know that term, no? SA 240, management override of control, fictitious journal entries being recorded. So you find out, oh, why the internal controls were not effective for these transactions. Then you come to know it was a transaction with a related party. Right, so internal auditors report. Right, then the specific, what you say, legal professional advice taken before entering into a contract. Right, so why legal professional advice taken? Again, say because it was a transaction with a related party. Contracts renegotiated during the year. And earlier the loan to be repaid was to be repaid in 5 years. Now they say don't worry, you repay in 20 years. So contracts renegotiated. So it says then why such leniency in the terms of the loan agreement? Again, it's a transaction with a related party. See, every point, record, document which I am trying to tell, which I am telling you right now, we have to try to link, okay, how can this record document help me identify a related party, relationship or transaction? Right, so very important question has been asked several times in the exam regarding the audit procedures to identify the related parties. Right, can we just put it together? What are the records and documents I talked about? Right, one, yes, everybody with me? Okay, one, the confirmations from the third parties. Next one, the minutes of the meetings of the board of directors, audit committee, shareholders. Next one, the shareholders register, the investment register, right? The pension plans of the entity, life insurance policies taken during the year, legal professional advice taken, contracts renegotiated during the year, income tax return, papers filed with the regulator, right? Then the contracts renegotiated during the year. Right, all these could be examples of the records and documents which will help you to identify the related parties. Okay, right, so that could be say one question which we discussed from 550. Another question which is coming in the exams, okay, essay 540, auditing of, what is 540 about? Auditing of accounting estimates including fair value accounting estimates and the related disclosures. Right, auditing of accounting estimates including the fair value accounting estimates and the related disclosures. Right, so whenever you do the audit of the accounting estimates, that is whenever you do the audit of the provisions, right, you always need to check the degree of estimation uncertainty. That how much uncertainty is associated with the calculation of this estimate. Like, you know, right now you're trying to calculate, okay, will the exam get postponed? Now that is a very high estimation uncertainty. And whether the lockdown will get extended. You're all doing estimate only, no. Till the time the official announcement come, what are we doing? We are doing 540 only, no. And accounting estimates. Not accounting estimate, we are doing economic estimates. You know, we are trying to see the state, okay, what will happen. Lockdown estimates, what we are doing, actually I can call it that way. Okay, anyways, right, so whenever we talk about accounting estimates, an important term over there is the estimation uncertainty. Okay, how uncertain it is to calculate this estimate. In technical terms, the definition of estimation uncertainty is an inherent lack of precision in its measurement. right? An inherent lag. It's by default, it's not possible to calculate it precisely. Inherent lack of precision in its measurement. That is estimation uncertainty. Recently in the exams, I've seen a lot of questions coming. They are asking examples of high estimation uncertainty. Exam after that, they are asking examples of low estimation uncertainty. So at least when you know high estimation uncertainty, if you put a naught over there, it becomes a point for low estimation uncertainty. Right, so first let's look into the examples of the high estimation uncertainty. Right, everybody, have you understood? We are talking about SA 540, which is the standard on audit of accounting estimate, not lockdown estimate. Okay, in that we talk that there is a very important term while doing audit of accounting estimate called as the estimation uncertainty. And now we are talking about the examples of the high estimation uncertainty. Okay, right. First example given in the standard, when the estimate is highly dependent upon judgment. Highly dependent upon judgment. Like best example, classic example over here, that whether the company will win the litigation or not, which is going on in the Supreme Court. And listed entities, if you look at the amount of their litigation going on, it says, 6,000 crore. 6,000 and then crore. Now that is the amount of litigation. Now it's a do or die situation. If you lose the case, you have to pay 6,000 crore. If you win the case, no 6,000 crore rupees to be paid by you. And right now it's an estimate. And it entirely depends upon judgment regarding what is your lawyer's opinion, what are your points of defense, that whether you will win or lose the case. Right, so it is high, when it is highly dependent upon judgment, that is an example of a high estimation uncertainty. So see, it is so logical. Now, it is high estimation uncertainty. So what is the first point I told you? Highly dependent upon judgment. Second one, the entity is using highly specialized entity developed model. They tell this is the way how we calculate provision for tax. This is the way we calculate provision for retirement benefit. This is the way we calculate provision for depreciation. All these are estimates only, This is how we test for the revaluation of assets, impairment, all estimates. You have said, oh, very interesting your method. From where did you find this method? They say, no, in-house, we prepared. No AFRF, nobody, we on our own prepared. Highly specialized entity developed model. Right, so again that's going to be an example of a high estimation uncertainty. So what is the client using for calculating the accounting estimate? They are using the highly specialized entity developed model. So the third point comes from this point only. What is the third point? That means they are not using a recognized measurement technique. What is a recognized measurement technique? Which is given in the accounting standard, which is given in the AFRF, which is generally used in the industry for calculating estimate. No, what they are using, highly specialized entity developed model, and what they are not using is a recognized measurement technique. So that's the third point, second and third point. Fourth point over there, last year whatever estimates you calculated, the actual expenditure of those would have come in the current year. So last year you made a provision of 100 crore, say provision for warranty claim. An actual warranty claim in the current year came to 12 crore. How much provision for warranty claim you made in the last year? 100 crore. How much was the actual in the current year? Only 12 crore. Right, so now again what will you say? There is a significant difference between the expected amount and the actual amount. So that's again an example of a high estimation uncertainty. Right, whereas there is substantial difference between the original accounting estimate and the actual outcome. Substantial difference between the original accounting estimate and the actual outcome. Right, so what are the four examples of the high estimation uncertainty given by the standard? First two, so you catch the word high only. It is highly dependent upon judgment and they are using highly specialized entity developed model. From the second, the third point automatically comes. If they are using highly specialized entity developed models, that means they are not using the recognized measurement techniques. Right, not using the recognized measurement techniques. And the fourth one, that there is a substantial difference between the original accounting estimate and the actual value in the of the estimates which were made in the prior period. And how do you convert it into an answer for low estimation uncertainty? Right, it is not highly dependent upon judgment. right? They are not using highly specialized entity developed model, rather they are using the generally accepted audit, their general AFRF for calculation of the estimates. There is no substantial difference between the original accounting estimate of the prior period and the actual outcome in the current period. It is very simple to calculate, right? So those could be the examples of the low estimation uncertainty, right? Is that clear to everyone? Okay, right. So now coming say to another standard, let's say discuss SA 580, which is regarding the written representations. Right, SA 580, which is regarding the written representations. Right, so towards the end of the audit, before we are about to sign an audit report, we take the written representations from the management. Right, so written representation, one of the question which is uploaded into the RTP but yet to be asked in the exams, right, is regarding the date and period covered by the written representations. Right, the date, as on which date should the auditor take the written representations from the management, and what should be the period covered by the written representations. Okay, yes, so again I need to keep on checking with you, okay, whether all of you know that now 540, high, low, estimation, uncertainty, that question we finished discussing. And I've already told you that now I'm going to discuss one question with you from SA 580, written representation. See, this awareness is very important. Huh? Okay, every moment of the day, right now when you are at home for the whole day, you're aware regarding how you're utilizing or rather not utilizing your time. That awareness itself will put you on track. Okay, right. So SA 580, written representation, the date and period covered by the written representation. As on which date should the auditor take the written representation from the management? Right, as on which date? Right, as near as practicable, but not, yes, but not after the date of the audit report. Right, so as near as practicable but not after the date of the auditor's report. So say audit report date is say 30th of April 2022. Right, so your written representation should be obtained from the management near to 30th April but never after 30th April. Right, so what should be the date as on which the auditor should obtain the written representation from the management? As near as practicable but not after the date of the audit report. Right, what should be the period covered by the written representation? For what period does the auditor want the written representation from the management? For what period? Right, the period covered by the auditor's opinion. If the auditor's opinion is for 12 months, for 1 year, then the written representation would also be required for 12 months, that is 1 year. Say 1st April 2021 to 31st March 2022. So the auditor would also like to obtain the written representation for that period. Right, so the date, as on which date? As near as practicable but not after the date of the audit report. And what should be the period covered? Right, the period covered by the auditor's opinion. Okay. Right, sometimes there could be a situation that the current management was not present for the entire period for which the auditor wants the written representation. Sometimes there could be a situation where the current management was not present for the entire period for which the auditor wants the written representation. Like in my example, the auditor wants the representation from 1st April 2021 to 31st March 2022. But there was a change in the company management on 1st of October. So right now as on 30th of April, the new management has been in office only from 1st of October. But auditor wants representation from 1st of April. New management says we came only in office from 1st of October. So how can we give you representation for the earlier 6 months when we were not the management of the company? Do you understand the question? Okay, change in current management, the current management is not present for the whole of the period for which the representation is required by the auditor. What does the standard say? It does not diminish, reduce. And that if there is a change in management or anything, it does not diminish the responsibility of the current management. The current management still needs to provide the representation to the auditor for the whole of the period. So this new management who became the management of 1st of October, they still have to provide the written representation to the auditor from 1st of April. Right? Because they represent the management. No, so whatever is the past of the company, they have to take the responsibility for the same also. And if management refuses, they say, no, auditor, we can't give you representation from 1st April, we can only give from 1st of October. Limitation on scope, unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence, qualified opinion or disclaimer of opinion as may be appropriate. That we know. You tell no to the auditor says, our teacher has taught us. Limitation on scope. And a limitation on scope, unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. What to do? QO or DO. What is QO or DO? Qualified opinion or disclaimer of opinion as may be appropriate. Okay, right. So coming to another one. Right, coming to another standard, SA 610. Right, SA 610, which is regarding using the work of the internal auditors. Right, using the work, right, 600 series is regarding all the outsiders, no, using the work of the other auditor, using the work of the internal auditor, using the work of an auditor's expert. Right, so right now I am talking to you about SA 610, using the work of the internal auditors. Whether and to what extent can the statutory auditor use the work of the internal auditor? That is what is discussed in the standard. And if he decides to use the work, whether that work is adequate for the purpose of the audit. So you need to do the evaluation of the work of the internal auditor. Right. And second one over there, okay, whether the external auditor or the statutory auditor, whether he can take the direct assistance from the internal auditors. Right. So very important over there. Right. Upcoming trending question or content in SA 610 is regarding the direct assistance. Right, whether the statutory auditor, external auditor, whether he can take the direct assistance from the internal auditors. Right, direct assistance from the internal auditors. And if he decides to take the direct assistance from the internal auditor, then in that case to DSR, to direct, supervise and review the work of the internal auditors. Right, so what point am I discussing with you right now? Direct assistance from internal auditors. So now statutory auditor, external auditor, he needs to decide that whether I should do the work, the checking on my own, or whether I should take the direct assistance from the internal auditors. Right, so again, wherever you have to decide, then there is a question created over there. Determining where direct assistance can be used, right? So again, a very important question I am discussing with you. Determining where direct assistance from internal auditors can be used. Right, so you have to decide as simple as whether the external auditor should do the checking of expenditure on his own or whether he should take direct assistance from internal auditor as an example. Right, so now whether to take direct assistance, how to decide? 4 points over there. Whether to take, have you made a note? Right, are you listening to me carefully? Either a mental note or a physical note, but you should be aware of what question we are discussing right now. Right, so whether to take the direct assistance from the internal auditors, it depends upon the amount of judgment involved. Right, it depends upon the amount of the judgment involved. Right, say the judgment involved is very, very high. You know, you have to identify and assess the RMM in the audits. RMM in the financial statement audit. You cannot say, "Hey, internal auditor, what you do now, you just identify and tell me all the RMM. What is this?" Not done. That assessing the RMM where there is more than limited judgment involved, you cannot take direct assistance from the internal auditors for the same. Right, so determining whether direct assistance from internal auditors can be taken or can be used. What is the first factor to determine that? The amount of judgment involved. If more than limited judgment is involved, that is high amount of judgment involved, it says no taking the direct assistance from the internal auditors, do your work on your own, external auditor. Second one, it depends upon the assessed RMM. Right, so if you have identified expenses to be a risk of material misstatement, Again, what does it say? No taking direct assistance from the internal auditors. Do the work on your own. Right, so what are the factors? Factor number 1, the amount of judgment involved. Second one, the RMM, right, the assessed RMM. Third one, it depends upon the objectivity and the organizational status of the internal auditors. That whether the internal auditors are objective, right, whether they have, there is no limitation on the scope of work of internal auditors. Right, so the objectivity and the organizational status of the internal auditors. Right, so you say no, they are not very objective. No means then you have to do the work on your own. You cannot take direct assistance. Right, so the objectivity and the organizational status. And the fourth one over there, the competence of the internal auditors. Right, the competence. Now you want to tell the internal auditor, okay, in the expenses I want you to check the GST component. And now say that fellow, he is not aware, maybe not aware, you think he may not be aware regarding the tax nitty-gritties relating to the expenses. Then that work, you think he doesn't have the competence, then you cannot take the direct assistance from the internal auditors. I'm just giving it as an example. Okay, right, so what are the points I'm telling you over here? Determining, what is the heading? Determining whether the direct assistance from the internal auditors can be used. What are the 4 points over there? Right, the amount of judgment involved. Second one, the RMM, the assessed RMM. Third one, the objectivity and the organizational status of the internal auditors. And the fourth one is the competence of the internal audit function, or the competence of the internal auditors. Right, the competence of the internal auditors. Right, so that is again a very important question in or a concept, or a term in SA 610, which is regarding the direct assistance. Okay. Right, then another standard, which is again, what you say, like direct assistance is a new term which has recently come up. Another term which is recently doing its round is the key audit matters, the CAM. SA 701, communicating. Yes, what is 701? Communicating the key audit matters in the independent auditor's report. Right, very important standard again. SA 701, which is regarding the communicating what? The key audit matters in the independent auditor's report. Right, what is the definition of key audit matters given in SA 701? Right, you remember that once upon a time, somewhere where you had done some audit class, this definition of key audit matters was discussed with you. Okay, right, key audit matters are those matters, right, pay attention. Right, key audit matters are those matters that in the auditor's professional judgment, not in anybody's judgment, auditor's professional judgment, were of most significance. Okay, these most significant words are actually of most significance. Okay, key audit matters are those matters that in the auditor's professional judgment were of most significance in the audit of the financial statements of the current period. Right, I repeat the definition once again. What are key audit matters? Key audit matters are those matters that in the auditor's professional judgment, means my judgment, were of most significance and most significance in the audit of the financial statements of the current period. Right, and key audit matters are selected from the matters communicated to TCWG. Right, so 260 out of all the matters which you communicate to TCWG, you select the key audit matters. Right, so that was the definition of the key audit matters. Okay, so one question I'll take from 701, which is like circumstances when key audit matters are not to be communicated. Right, means you know कि ये key audit matter है ना, auditor knows कि this is a key audit matter, but still he says no, I'll keep quiet, I'll not communicate this key audit matter. Knowing that it is a key audit matter, still auditor decides not to communicate it in the audit report. That is the question I'm discussing right now. Circumstances when matters determined to be key audit matters are not to be communicated in the audit report. Right? What are those circumstances? One, when law regulation precludes disclosure. And the law regulation says that this matter is not allowed to be disclosed in the audit report. So law regulation always overrides. So then we will not disclose. A second one, the adverse consequences of doing so. You writing it in the audit report as a key audit matter. The adverse consequences of doing so will outweigh the public interest benefits of such communication. Right? The adverse consequences of doing so will outweigh the public interest benefits of such communication. Right, so these are the two circumstances. Means adverse consequences will outweigh the public interest benefits. In simple language, it means it will do more harm than good. Right, so what are the two circumstances when key audit matters are not to be communicated in the audit report? What are the circumstances when key audit matters are not to be communicated in the audit report? One, law regulation precludes disclosure. Wonderful. And second one, the adverse consequences of doing so will outweigh the public interest benefits of such communication. Okay. Right. Another question from SA 701, which is again asked in the exams, is determining key audit matters. So how to determine? You have so many matters which you've communicated to TCWG, and now out of that you have to identify, okay, boss, which is a key audit matter out of this. Right, yes, so determining the key audit matters. So how to determine key audit matters? One, again, it depends upon the RMM and significant risk. Right, areas of higher assessed RMM or significant risk. Right, this point was also there in the direct assistance one. Okay, so you need to create separate compartments in your brain where, you know, organized files and folders are maintained of all the content and theory of the subject. Rather, not only this one subject, of all the 8 subjects which you need to study. Okay, right. So determining the key audit matters. What is the first factor in determining? It depends upon the RMM or the significant risk. That whether that matter has been assessed to be an RMM, risks of material misstatement, or whether it has been assessed to be a significant risk. Second one, whether significant auditor judgment has been involved in the evaluation of that matter, including the evaluation of the management judgment. Right, so whether auditor says it was like a big event for me, you know, to check these litigations relating to the client. So significant auditor judgment has been involved, then that could be a criteria due to which that matter may be considered to be a key audit matter, right, where significant auditor judgment has been involved. Right, and the third factor for determining whether it is a key audit matter is the effect on the audit of any significant event or transaction that took place during the period. Right, so any big event or transaction, like say, you know, amalgamation of 2 companies have been announced, or say like the Jio Facebook deal. Now that is a one-time event or transaction which has taken place. So this time you'll have to do the audit of that particular matter in great detail. Right, so again that could qualify or to be considered as a key audit matter. Right, do you understand the question which I discussed with you? Determining key audit matters. How to determine? Because from where key audit matters are selected? From the matters communicated to TCWG. Now from this, how to select whether a particular matter is a key audit matter? Right, how do you select whether it's a key audit matter? It depends upon the RMM or the significant risk, whether the matter has been identified, whether there is an RMM or a significant risk. Second one, whether significant auditor judgment has been involved in the audit of that particular matter. Right, and the third one, the effect on the audit of any significant event or transaction that took place during the period. Right, the effect on the audit of any significant event or transaction that took place during the period. Right, so that is SA 701, which is regarding the communicating the key audit matters in the independent auditor's report. Okay, right. Yes, say one more standard which we could cover is say SA 620. Right, 620, using the work of an auditor's expert. Right, so expert like actuary, lawyer, engineer, IT, right, you have to use the work of an expert. So now whenever you have to use the work of an expert, before evaluating the work of the expert, first you have to evaluate the expert only. Are you understanding? And using the work of an expert, but before I evaluate the work of the expert, first I have to evaluate the expert only. That really is the expert an expert. Don't write such complicated language in the paper, okay? That is just for understanding right now. And you will say, is the expert an expert? Ab ye kya baat hui? Okay, right. So using the work of an auditor's expert, in that we first talk about evaluation of the expert. Right, what did I tell you? Before going to evaluation of expert's work, we talk about evaluation of the expert. Right, how do you evaluate? Is the expert really an expert? You look into the competence degree, and whether they are the members of the relevant professional bodies. You look into their visiting card, you look into their write-up, their biodata, their CV. So the competence of the expert. Does he have the nature and level of expertise which is required to perform the work? Right. Then capability. He has the competence, but whether he can put that competence into action, for that capability is required. Right. So evaluation of expert. What do you need to check? One, the competence. Second one, the capability. Why capability is required? What do you mean by capability? To put competence into action, capability is required. And the third one, the objectivity. That he will give an unbiased opinion or report for whatever work we tell the expert to do. He is not, he will not be influenced by the management. Otherwise, namesake, he is auditor's expert. But if he is influenced by management, then there is no use of appointing an expert. Okay, right? So evaluation of expert, how do you do that? Right, evaluation of expert, you look into the competence, the capability and the objectivity of the auditor's expert. Right, competence, capability and the objectivity. From where can I get information regarding the competence, capability and objectivity of the auditor's expert? The question is the sources to obtain information regarding the competence, capability, objectivity of the expert. How will I come to know whether the expert is an expert? From what sources will I come to know? One, discussion with that expert. You can call up that expert and ask him regarding the work that he does. Right, so discussion with that expert. Discussion with others who have previously used the work of an expert. And a discussion with others. So some of your other friend has used the work of that lawyer. So you asked him how that lawyer is good. Right, so discussion with others. Lawyer is just as an example I'm taking for an expert over here. Personal experience with the previous work performed by that expert. Last year also you'd used the work of that expert. So you already know regarding how his work is and how he is as an expert. Right, so what am I discussing with you? Sources to obtain information regarding the expert. What are the sources? The competence. Then the yes, what are the sources? The discussions with that expert. Discussions with others who are familiar with the work of that expert. Personal experience with the previous work performed by that expert. The knowledge of that expert's qualification. I told you can ask for his visiting card, write-up or so. Right, so knowledge of that expert's qualification. Any published books or papers written by that expert. And at the moment I say, MP Vijay Kumar, it has to be accounting standard. The moment I say Singhania, it has to be tax. Right, so any published books or papers written by that expert. And also the firm's quality control policies and procedures. Right, so what are those? Those are the sources to obtain the information regarding the expert. So one question I discussed with you, evaluation of expert. For that, competence, capability and objectivity. Second one, the sources to obtain information regarding the expert. And the third one over there, evaluation of the expert's work. Now I will evaluate the expert's work. First I evaluated the expert himself. Right, how do you evaluate the expert's work? Right, you check whether the findings and conclusions which have been given by the expert, whether they are consistent with the other audit evidence available. Right, findings and conclusions, are they consistent with the other audit evidence? Right, so management had also appointed expert, auditor also appointed expert, both experts saying similar thing, same thing. You find that work of expert seems okay. And the findings and conclusions, are they consistent with the other audit evidence available? Next one, the relevance and the reasonableness of the assumptions and methods which have been used by the expert. So whatever assumptions have been made by the expert while calculating the amounts for the work which we've told them, whether those assumptions are reasonable. Right, whether the methods are in accordance with the AFRF. So from that I can come to know how the work has been done by the expert. Right, so the assumptions and methods. And the third one, the relevance, the accuracy and the completeness of the what? Evaluation of experts' work. First point, findings and conclusions. Second point, assumptions and methods. Third point, what? The relevance, accuracy and completeness of the, yes, relevance, accuracy and completeness of the source data which is being used by the expert. Like, you know, for calculating retirement benefit, that actually he is going to be the expert. No, he is going to require the source data of the salary of your employees, right? The salary register. So whether that source data, whether it is relevant, accurate and complete, right? The relevance, accuracy and completeness of the source data being used by the expert. Right, is it clear to everyone? So in essay 620, what did I discuss with you? Evaluation of expert. Then sources to obtain information regarding the competence, capability and the objectivity of the auditor's expert. And third one, evaluation of the expert's work. Right, how do you do the evaluation of the expert's work? Right, findings and conclusions, assumptions and methods and the source data. Right, so whatever standards we have touched upon, I expect that today in detail you go through those standards and other standards also, like, you know, you study them, be in touch, you know, see the important questions which are given in each of these standards. Right, few of them who are writing exams say, you know, we are right now, this revision series is for any student who is anytime going to write an exam for CA final. But then there are students who are, say, writing in May 21, November 21, who have a question regarding the regular classes and all. So you can visit the website aartilahoti.com for the further details regarding the same. And tomorrow we'll be having a discussion on the chapter of professional ethics. Right, so tomorrow it's all going to be guilty, not guilty, guilty, not guilty. Right, so thank you so much.